So I have a question for you. Who here thinks they make decisions for themselves? Raise your hand. I know, sometimes your parents make you do homework, maybe eat your vegetables, but for the most part, right, we think we make our decisions for ourselves. And this idea that even though we recognize that, we live in a body, we live in the world, we're affected by things around us. We know that sometimes we have to do certain things. There's something inside of us that is able still to make decisions, to decide what we want, who we want to be, what we want to engage with, and most critically, what we want to connect with. This concept comes from the philosopher René Descartes, who said that we all inhabit bodies, but there's something inside, something that was later termed the ghost in the machine. This ghost that sort of pulls the levers and decides what we're going to do with our life. But sometimes it turns out the decisions we make are maybe not so much coming from us. And I want to talk about a simple decision that all of you may have recently made or may be coming to make. So who here is looking forward to getting their driver's license or maybe just got it? Yeah, I'm sure, right? I remember those days. Those were good times. And you'll find there's some small thing that happens when you get your driver's license. You're asked if you want to be an organ donor. And what this means is if you, in the case that something tragic and terrible happens, are willing to give up your organs to someone else. Now, this is a really important decision, something that affects your body, what will happen to you, and the kind of thing that people put a lot of thought into. And yet it turns out that in different countries, the rate of people that say, yes, I will be an organ donor, to the rate of people that say, no, I don't want to be, is radically different. So here we have a chart of countries. Countries that some are similar, some of them are different. And the top 4 countries, Denmark, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, they all have very low rates. So in these countries, a very small percentage of people said, yes, I want to be an organ donor. In these other countries at the bottom, Austria, Belgium, France, everyone said, yeah, I want to be an organ donor. Up to 99% of people, 99.9% in some of these countries, said, I want to be an organ donor. And so this maybe makes us think, why were these decisions so different? Why was there such a change here in how people made this decision of whether to be an organ donor or not? And the answer is actually really simple. It turns out, in a study that was highlighted by the behavioral economist Dan Ariely, that the form was different, the form that you actually signed. In the cases of the country at the top, you had to say, yes, I decide, I opt in. I'm going to check the box. I'm going to be an organ donor. In the countries towards the bottom, you had to check a box that said, no, I don't want to. And so you think that you're making these decisions, but actually it seems like overwhelmingly everyone here was making a decision based on whether it was an opt-in or an opt-out. Which raises the question, who's more responsible for your decision? Is it you, or is it the person that designed the form? The person that decided to make it a check-in or a check-out? Now that's a relatively simple type of form and a relatively simple decision. And you can actually think about that form as a kind of technology, a simple input device to say what we want to do. But in the modern world, we live with so much more complex and difficult choices. Just think about what to put on your iPhone. The App Store has now over 1.5 million different apps. And you have to select from this extraordinary range of different apps which one you want to install. And again, there are technology systems behind the scenes helping us make these decisions, influencing what we decide to put on our phone. In the App Store, for instance, there are certain recommendations, featured apps that are shown up top. And ask yourself, are you more likely to download an app if when you show up on the App Store, it's right there looking at you? Definitely. That's what drives most of these decisions. And so we see hidden behind our own decisions the impact, the effect of technology guiding us in one direction or another, whether we're aware of it or not. But we have many, many more choices. And in the modern era, we have so many things to think about and worry about. We have to ask ourselves, what kind of job do we want to have? What kind of college do we want to get into? What are things that are important to us? What sports do we want to play? All of these things speak to the things that we're going to connect with, the people we're going to spend time with, the skills that we're going to need to learn and master, where our time is going to be spent, and who we're going to become. These are enormously important questions, and we ask ourselves now, how do we make these decisions? Again, coming back to that starting point, who makes these decisions? How do we make them? Well, in the old days, we would go out to sources of information and we would do our research. That's how we'd get news. We'd go out to a newspaper, we'd read an article, we'd find something that was interesting. And we would do the work. We would have to uncover what was there. And so we would be guiding ourselves. Is that happening today, though? Now, when we want to read news, we get news pushed to us. The top stories are shown through our social networks or shared or recommended to us. Books we might want to read are recommended to us on Amazon. The best things that we want to watch are shown right up top on Netflix when we log in. And so increasingly, we're not doing the research anymore. The systems that are churning through the data, that are looking through the things that we like and don't like, are presenting us with the choice. And in making that presentation, making a decision for us in a lot of different ways. This is going way beyond news, too. In fact, we're starting to live in a world where the machine is now in the machine. The algorithms that control what show up on your phone, where you're shown to get dinner, who you're suggested to meet, which airline flight to take. All of these decisions now are starting to be shown and revealed to us through systems like Google Now, these predictive networks that are helping us make the decisions and deciding what we do. And now we have to really ask ourselves, now that more and more of our lives are being directed by these systems, by these machine learning-based systems, these artificial intelligences that are showing us all the most important things in our life and what to do, who's really in control? Are we still making the decision? Or is Google Now, when it tells us, hey, I found a restaurant that we think you might like, is now Google Now making the decision for you instead of yourself? What's interesting is that in many cases, these patterns of the algorithms can also be reverse engineered. So when you start to develop an eye for the machine, for the algorithm, for the intelligence that's making suggestions for you, you can start to learn how it works. And you can sometimes use this to your advantage. And this is one upside of a world where we're now living in that's directed increasingly by machine systems and machine intelligence. So I want to share a quick story. So I'm a startup founder. Many of you are as well, or hope to be. And we went out and we raised money at some point. And we used a platform called AngelList, which is a system to connect investors with startup founders. It's a platform for connection. But as happens in all these systems, there's too many startups out there. There's too many investors. So how do you match the right investors with the right startups? So someone at AngelList built an algorithm. And the algorithm sent out the top companies every week. And it said, these are the companies that investors should look at. And so if you're a founder, you really want to be in that email. That email is your way you get in front of the investors that you need to pitch. But it's controlled by an algorithm. There's no editor. There's no person sitting in front of it. It's just a system deciding which companies are the hottest. Well, you can ask yourself, what would go into a machine learning-based system to make that decision? How might the programmer that wrote that actually design it? Well, if you think about it, you might say, oh, well, we'd be interested in activity. What are the startups that are generating the most buzz? And in fact, that's how the system works. And so what we did when we raised money, I think I pressed something, is we, instead of slowly adding all of our news week after week, month after month, adding the investors that were signing up and joining our company, we held it all back. And then in 1 week, we added it all at once over the same few days. And so even though everything that was being added had accumulated over months, suddenly to the algorithm, it looked like we were the hottest deal on the planet. Everyone was talking about us. We got press added, we got investors added, advisors, we asked everyone to comment, and lo and behold, we were one of the top startups and we were sent out in that email. An essential piece to how we raised our money and how we become successful as a company. Again, just by reading the algorithm, figuring out how the systems work. And so you have to also then think, if the world is increasingly controlled by these algorithms and these systems, who's in control of them? Who's reading them, manipulating them, mastering them, and using them to your advantage? We're entering a really different type of world. A world in which a lot of the decisions and the things that we think about are going to be controlled by some algorithm, some machine learning-based system that's deciding what's best for us. And I think we really have to step back and ask ourselves, what kind of world do we want to live in, and what kind of systems do we want to be controlling what we watch, what we see? Amazon may just be picking the best products to make the most money, but maybe we can come up with systems that recommend the most insightful, the most interesting products, or the movies or the books we should learn and read about to become a better person, or to learn the skills that we want that are needed for the right job. Really, the future that you guys will be designing and building is a very possible place. All of these outcomes are going to be part of the story. But we want to really think about the role that these algorithms play in our lives, how we can use them, how we can optimize them, and what effect they're having on the trajectory of our own personal lives and our society overall. Thanks very much.